Welcome to the LRB. I'm Steve Miller, the Chief of the Bureau, and with me here is Peggy Hurley. Hi, Peggy.
Hi, Steve.
Peggy has recently written a constitutional highlight on the Establishment Clause. Peggy, tell us why the Establishment Clause is in the Wisconsin Constitution.
Well, the Wisconsin Constitution mirrors in large part the United States Constitution. And as everyone knows, the Establishment Clause is part of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. And the framers of the Constitution had foremost in their mind freedom from any kind of religious persecution or religious oppression. The Wisconsin framers of the Constitution also felt that this was an extremely important aspect of our freedom as citizens. And so they enshrined basically the same rules in our Constitution, slightly different language, but they've been interpreting along the same lines as the United States Constitution.
And what is the effect of the Establishment Clause?
The Establishment Clause has two parts, which taken to an extreme are kind of at odds with each other, but we can discuss that a little bit later. The Establishment Clause says that the state cannot establish an official religion. It cannot even encourage an official religion. And on the other hand, it cannot hamper the practice of free religion of any citizen.
Okay, so what has the Wisconsin Supreme Court had to say about the Establishment Clause?
Well, again, the Wisconsin Supreme Court has had its own individual cases, and it's also followed precedents set by the United States Supreme Court. Right now, it has stated explicitly that it is following what's called the Lemon test, based after a case involving a person named Lemon that was decided by the United States Supreme Court. And the Lemon test is a three-part test to determine whether legislation runs afoul of the Establishment Clause.
Okay, so what are those three parts?
The three parts are that in order to pass constitutional muster, legislation must have a secular purpose, which is to say a non-religious purpose. It must also have a primary effect that does not either further or inhibit religious practices. And it may not involve excessive entanglement of the legislature or the courts or any branch of the government in religious matters.
Okay, if the legislature wants to pass a bill and they think that it is possibly going to infringe upon the Establishment Clause, what can they do? What would their strategy be to avoid violating the Constitution?
Well, the Lemon test really is a nice kind of blueprint to see if your legislation is going to have trouble or not, or at least to do the best you can to reduce the likelihood of a challenge. Again, the first step is a secular purpose. This is probably the easiest step to satisfy, because as long as it doesn't directly affect religion or religious practice or religious beliefs, it probably has some sort of secular purpose for society. The second one is the primary effect of the legislation religious or secular? As long as the legislation has a secular purpose, it will probably have a primary effect that also is secular. It's not to say that it can't have any religious effect. In fact, the courts have found that just about anything that you can imagine may have an effect on religion. Anything from attending schools to getting one's photo taken for a driver's license, for example. But as long as the primary or first effect is secular, you should be okay. And the third step is excessive entanglement. The legislature needs to make sure that they're avoiding excessive entanglement, which is to say that they don't want the courts to be dragged into interpreting religious doctrine. They don't want any branch of government trying to decide whether something is a legitimate expression of religion or not. That is not terribly common, but when legislation does invite entanglement with religious expression, it can be rather challenging and rather daunting to overcome that third step in a court challenge. So by looking at the three steps of the Lemon test and making sure that your legislation doesn't run afoul of them, you should be okay.
Thank you, Peggy, and thank you for watching the LRB podcast. If you want to learn more, you can read the Constitutional Highlight on the LRB webpage.